Okay. Hi, Ginger.
Hi, how you doing, Sam?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I am good. I'm just getting over the flu. I was in bed all weekend, but I actually feel pretty great today.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's that season. Everybody is sick.
Yeah. It had not hit our household yet. So, it's relatively speaking, it's not too bad.
That's good. That's good. All right, let's dive into Ozempic today or GLP-1s in general. I just
Right.
know people know Ozempic as like that main brand, but technically
Yeah.
just GLP-1. So, are you pro GLP-1s or against GLP-1s?
I am pro GLP-1s, but they need to be used thoughtfully. And I have some videos on my YouTube channel about like the common issues people face, and there are solutions for these things. But also, like, you were saying the brand name we know, Ozempic. I think in the next couple years, like we're gonna see so many of these coming out. There's gonna be so many, and they're gonna be better, and they're gonna be a little different. You know what I mean? But like everybody's trying to cash in on this, all the pharma companies, because obviously it's a bajillion dollar industry now,
Mhm.
and it's gonna be a huge thing. Like this is gonna be something we talk about for a while.
So, who should be taking Ozempic?
Well, definitely it's intended for people with type 2 diabetes and people who are living with obesity and struggling to lose weight. So that's who it's intended for. But I take a tiny dose of Ozempic and I have type 1 diabetes. I do not live with obesity. I'm not trying to lose weight, but it is so helpful. And I'll send you an article where a billion, let's say bajillion, because that's my apparently my number for the day, is a bajillion other people with type 1 share why they take it. It is so helpful. And I know we're going to get into all of that, but more and more type 1s are taking it and getting their doctors to prescribe it. And I think just around the corner, hopefully in the next year or so, it will become normal to prescribe this to type 1s, regardless of their body weight.
So, okay, what even is Ozempic or what is a GLP-1? Like, what is the scientific background of it?
Yeah. And so let's see, there's Ozempic, there's Manjaro, there's Trulicity. There's another one that I'm forgetting. You might have heard of Simlin. Simlin is the old school GLP-1. It is only mimicking the hormone amylin. And Simlin is a pain in the butt. It's been around for like over a decade, and you have to take it multiple times a day. So if you're still on Simlin or you're wondering, well, why is this any more exciting than Simlin? A lot of reasons. Okay. Someone is like a dinosaur. All right. So the GLP-1 medications, they mimic a bunch of hormones in our system, primarily in our digestive system, that do a whole bunch of things that affect your metabolism, how you crave food, how you digest food. But all of these things also affect type 1 diabetes, but we'll get to that in a minute. So the main things GLP-1s do for you, they help you feel full sooner when you're eating. So they're literally, it's not like a physical fullness, it's literally communicating to your brain that you are full sooner. They reduce your cravings generally for food. And you've heard horror stories of people saying they can't eat anything and they don't eat at all. Yes, you can take too much of these things. And obviously, anyone who's saying that is taking way too much. This to me is a no-brainer. You should not be taking so much of a medication that you are sick all the time.
Right.
But
Makes
why do we
sense.
even have to discuss that? Yeah. And I know a couple people with type 1 who did struggle with a lot of weight gain after their diagnosis. They were diagnosed in their early 20s and they were taking so much that they couldn't go out to eat with their partners and they were puking after a lot of meals. Both of them were getting married soon though. So they didn't care and they just wanted to lose the weight for the wedding day. That's not, it's not necessary to be that sick all the time. It's not a long-term success plan. They both gained a ton of weight back after they went off the drug. You don't need to be on so much that you're sick all the time. The long-term success plan with this medication is that you take as little as possible and then you combine it with lifestyle habits. That's the way to do it correctly.
What is like as little as possible? Like what's like the dosage?
Well, wait, let me finish. I got
Okay.
derailed by my also it slows down how quickly you digest food, right? Which helps you feel full longer, which is important for reducing for someone who's overeating. And it increases your sensitivity to insulin.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the last big thing it does is it decreases how much sugar your liver is putting out, which is a big thing in type 1, and you might not know it. Like they don't tell us. Can we go right into why type 1s benefit from this even if they don't have a
Yes.
weight struggle? Okay.
Yes.
So the thing that I've been shouting from the rooftops ever since I learned it from a really brilliant research gal who also has type 1. I learned this a few years ago, and I've been explaining it as much as I can because it relieves so much of the guilt we have for always feeling hungry, for not being able to stop post-meal spikes, no matter how hard we try sometimes, right? Like we have to work really hard to control those post-meal spikes. Never feeling full sometimes. So I know there are people out there who don't have the constant type 1 hunger and they do feel full. Congratulations to those people. But many of us struggle with constant hunger and never feeling full. And
Wait,
I didn't know.
why is that?
Yeah, I didn't know it was related to diabetes. It's because there are five other hormones that we don't regulate properly. So our immune system attacks and destroys the cells that make insulin. That same cell is also responsible for the hormone amylin, which I mentioned earlier with Simlin, right? But then, so you've heard of beta cells, right?
Yes.
But there's also alpha cells and gamma and delta and epsilon cells. And those cells regulate things like how much sugar your liver produces. So the reason we don't protect ourselves from lows is not because we're taking injections of insulin. It's because our liver isn't getting the message from our beta cells
Mm.
to produce sugar and produce glucagon, really, which then tells the liver to produce sugar, right? So glucagon is the hormone that alpha cells regulate.
Okay. So glucagon comes from your liver?
No, I'm confusing you. Glucagon comes from your amylin cells, just like insulin comes from your beta cells.
Okay. So this
And
is
when
all within the
glucagon,
pancreas, technically.
yeah, and it's all supposed to be regulated, and all these things talk to each other. But the communication system is broken because the beta cells are broken. So the beta cells would normally say, "Hey, blood sugar is dropping. I'm going to stop producing insulin. Let's tell the alpha cells to do their job and produce some glucagon, and the glucagon tells your liver to release stored sugar, and then you don't go low. You and I are not getting that communication between our beta cells and our alpha cells.
Hmm. Okay.
But there's these other hormones that the other cells in this little group in your pancreas regulate. Somatostatin, polypeptide. I should have the list out because when I have to come up with them, I always blank on some. Glucagon, ghrelin, and these things regulate your appetite, feeling full when you're eating, how quickly you digest food. So we do digest food more quickly than non-diabetics, which
Hmm.
means we feel full sooner. We don't produce the hormones that tell our brain, and all those hormones I just said of ghrelin, somatostatin, polypeptide, those all they all do something within this system of saying, hey, brain, you're full. Hey, stomach, don't digest food so quickly. Hey, liver, calm down. We don't need extra glucose right now. We just ate a meal. Why are you producing so much glucose? So you and I need more insulin just for our overactive liver than we would if we didn't have diabetes. And what do you think that insulin is doing with all that extra liver glucose?
Going into our bloodstream, spiking our blood
Well,
sugar.
and eventually, yeah. And then you need insulin for that. And then it's getting stored as extra body fat.
Ugh.
Right? So that means we're fighting this uphill battle when it comes to managing our weight because we need extra insulin for the extra glucose. It's not even glucose from what we're eating.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then we have this constant appetite. We don't feel as full. Our blood sugar spikes faster after we eat. So that is why we should be entitled to a microdose of a GLP-1 medication.
Okay. So when you say microdose, like what does that mean?
Depends on your size, right? I'm 5'2". I don't need a lot of anything, right? Compared to someone who's 6'2",
Mhm.
or a woman who's 5'8". So I can tolerate, I'll say. I don't have any real severe symptoms, or side effects, I'll say, of a GLP-1 if I take the therapeutic dose, the lowest therapeutic dose, which is 0.25 that the pen gives. That's the lowest dose that you can get from the pen. And I did take that for a little while, and I did try going up to zero point 0.5, but my stomach hurt every time I ate. Like it was a hurt I'd never felt before. It just hurt. And even like a banana and peanut butter, you know what I mean? I'm not talking about like a pizza and burger and fries, even the simplest clean food. So I was like, well, that's not a way to live. So I went back to 0.25. And then I weaned off it completely for about a month because I thought it was going to be taken from me. And I didn't want to cut cold turkey. I wanted to wean off it under my own, control.
Mhm.
Because my insurance wasn't going to cover it anymore. I lost insurance. I thought I wasn't going to be able to get coverage. So it took about a month. And again, I was on a low dose, right? So imagine now if you're on the 2 milligram dose. I was taking 0.25. Imagine the people who are on 2 milligrams, which were my friends that were very sick.
Mm.
And then they went off cold turkey to prepare for pregnancy, right? And they gained so much weight back because they're on so much of the drug. The first month, I didn't notice a big change. And then the start of that second month, I was like, man, what's going on with my diabetes? I'm terrible at this. And it was because the drug had finally cleared my system. I was getting zero help.
So you were just
And
noticing like higher blood sugars?
it was just suddenly I needed more insulin, right? Is really what it was. And so I was running higher, and I felt like I was doing something wrong until I realized like, oh, my insulin doses have gone up because I no longer have Ozempic in my system.
Mm.
So it took a month to fully clear. So when I went back on, I started playing with the pen and taking even less than 0.25. I was able to get insurance coverage with my new insurance. And I started hacking the pen with a syringe and taking 0.15 because I figured the less I need of this, the better. If I ever have to go off of it, and just the less you need of anything, the better,
Mhm.
typically, right?
Mhm.
I don't mean to shame anyone who needs large amounts of insulin, but it's just a fact. The less we need, the better off we are.
Mhm.
So that's what I currently take is 0.15. So I stick a syringe in the Ozempic pen and I pull out 15 units.
So is the GLP-1 like is it similar to insulin? Because I know it's in a pen. Like is the liquid like insulin?
It looks like insulin, but the quantity, so if you were to take 2 milligrams with a syringe, that's, I believe, 200 units. Yes. Right.
Okay.
So it's just a much larger dose. Um, yeah.
So how high could somebody go up or how much could they take at one time? Can they filter it themselves like an insulin pen? Or is it locked?
They control it big
Okay.
time. The way your prescription is written, they don't give you enough for you to just dose willy-nilly. Like you're just going to run out really quickly. They give you exactly how much your prescription says you're going to need.
Mm.
I got a little mad when I was using the pen needle and doing it properly because I was doing the 0.25. This was in the beginning when I followed along with the rules. And I could tell there was a lot more still in there, but it wouldn't go all the way to 0.25. And, as a type 1, I always feel like I'm being ripped off. So, as we all do. So, out of curiosity, I just stuck a syringe in there and tried to see how much was still in here
Mhm.
because I wanted to see how much they were ripping me off. And there was still like 25 units in there, which actually is 0.25. But the pen never lets you draw anything fully out of it. It never goes to zero.
Yeah.
So that's when I realized I could hack the pen and I started monkeying with my dose. And my pharmacist helped me confirm the translation of units in a syringe, a 100 unit syringe to be very clear, with the dosing in the pen.
Okay. So then how does this differ from like metformin?
Metformin is awesome. I take a little dose of that too, but metformin does one little thing. It tells your liver to calm the F down. And it does that really well, but a lot of people cannot tolerate metformin. The side effects of metformin, even on a low dose, can be brutal if your body simply is like, nope, I don't like that. And there's no wiggle room. If you're not taking too much of Ozempic, most people can tolerate it just fine.
Okay.
And I think we all have like a little threshold. I have heard a few stories of people who are like, oh, I got so sick on the lowest dose. All right, that person really can't tolerate that. But most people, if you're not overdoing it, can probably tolerate Ozempic just fine. Metformin is one of the oldest drugs in the world. I think it's great. It's been declared in research at Harvard as a fountain of youth. It reduces your risk of like four different types of cancer. But so many people just get diarrhea on it, basically.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So
Yeah.
it might not be worth it depending on your side
Well, I
effects.
mean, you kind of know right away if you can handle it or not.
Hmm.
Like you're supposed to give it 3 weeks metformin to let the side effects wear off. And if after 2 or 3 weeks you're still like scared to leave the house because of diarrhea, I had zero of that. So like I knew within days, like, oh, my body really likes this drug.
Okay. So why did
Yeah.
you choose Ozempic over the other brands? Is it just because of insurance coverage, or is there a reason you chose Ozempic?
Manjaro didn't exist yet. And Manjaro is more expensive. That is a GIP, GLP-1. So it has another little component to it. It's all the same effect and the same goals. I'm not going to try to say the sciencey word of what GIP stands for. It's like get blah, 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 something like that. GLP-1 is glucagon-like peptide.
Oh,
And that's, yeah, it's not even helpful to like dig into why they name it that or why is it called that.
right.
It's like,
Yeah. And
it's
honestly,
emulating hormones in there.
well, I was gonna say good for Ozempic too, in terms of as a marketer. I'm like, they did a great job like marketing their brand because everyone just says Ozempic. Nobody ever says the other
Yeah,
brands. And
I
so, and
know.
I'm like, people don't even, if you say GLP-1, people are like, what even is that? And you're like, oh, Ozempic. So they did a good job.
Yeah. And Trulicity is older. And from some people I've interviewed, Trulicity side effects are a little more dramatic. Ozempic is like an improved version of Trulicity
Right.
from
Because
just from the stories I've gathered.
since you're bringing up side effects, what are the side effects of Ozempic?
Yeah, so they're all digestive related, really. Um, I mean, basically, if you're taking too much, your stomach hurts. Maybe you have constipation. So Ozempic, by the way, like has been around for a while before it hit mainstream. I remember writing about it and the side effect I was just about to describe. I remember writing about it years ago and interviewing a diabetes educator who was saying that metformin and Ozempic go really well together because Ozempic can cause constipation. Metformin causes diarrhea, so the two together can kind of cancel each other out and mellow out your mellow out your side effects. Um, when you're on way too much, puking, not wanting to eat anything, those are the main side effects of just total digestive discomfort.
Was that solely from just taking too much, or is that like a sign that your body shouldn't be taking like this outside object?
It's just if you're taking too much. I could have all those symptoms if I went from my dose to 1 milligram, but someone of my size shouldn't be on 1 milligram. And so I have this great friend in the diabetes community. He's a type 1, but he's also a nurse practitioner in endocrinology, and he has been forever. His name is Chris Zoki. And if you go to diabetesnp.com, he is really good at helping type 1s get insurance approval for GLP-1s. And he takes it. He is super lean and he says it's life-changing, right? He's a nurse practitioner with type 1. And in his experience, type 1s need very small doses compared to, the drug was intended for type 2s who are living with obesity. So when they say the therapeutic dose is 2 milligrams, you need to take that with a grain of salt. If you do that, you're going to be sick. I've gotten messages from people who are like, oh, it was so helpful until they forced me to go up to this amount. And then I was so sick all the time and I couldn't handle it. But my blood sugars were so much better on that lower dose. I'm like, then don't listen to them and take the lower dose.
Hmm.
And so many people have not, maybe so many people are better at following rules than me, but like, you don't have to do everything your doctor says.
No, well, it's
If
like diabetes just in general, like insulin, like
Yes,
you
but yeah,
can't.
and you and I know that, but a lot of people don't.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if you're sick on that higher dose, there are even health insurance companies that won't continue covering it if you don't keep taking the higher dose. It's like it's their new way of trying to take away your coverage. So tell everybody you're taking the higher dose and just start taking the dose that you actually feel okay at.
Right.
And guess what? The side effect of that is that you won't go through it as quickly and you'll have a backup in your fridge.
There you go.
Yeah. My prescription is written for me to be taking zero point 0.5 to 1 milligram once a week. I take 0.15. I have a backup stock at this point.
Wait, you take that per week or per day?
It's taken weekly.
Oh, okay.
It lasts a week, so it's like a ultra long acting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool. That'd be cool if we had insulin like that.
There is an insulin like that, but they won't approve it in type 1 because they think it's too dangerous.
Oh, okay.
This was like FDA approved sometime in the last 2 months. So
Oh,
this
wow.
ultra long. It's
Interesting.
intended for type 2s who might have a hard time committing to or remembering to take a long acting every day.
Okay.
Whereas you and
Interesting.
I are acutely aware that we'll die tomorrow if we don't,
Right.
right? Whereas type 2 might not feel as much severity and
Sure.
urgency in their dose. Yeah.
So earlier you mentioned the two people that were on Ozempic and then went off of it due to pregnancy. So why can't you take it while pregnant?
It's just that it hasn't been studied and FDA approved in pregnant. Most drugs are not approved for pregnancy. Even most insulins are not approved for pregnancy simply because they haven't been studied in pregnancy. Like I used Lantus during my pregnancy, and Lantus is like category C in pregnancy because they've never studied it. You're not supposed to use it during pregnancy. Like this is the thing that I'm not gonna not like. I get that Novo Nordisk paid $1 million to get these two insulins approved for pregnancy. Good for
Right.
them.
And they also
Um,
don't want to be liable if something were to happen.
yes, and it's very hard to run pregnancy studies because you don't want to put all these babies at risk, right?
Right. Yes, that's a good
So
point.
an
Yep.
Ozempic study is like, I mean, and nobody's going to spend the money on getting Lantus approved for pregnancy because there's newer insulin.
Right.
Who would spend the money on that at this point? Nobody. So, but the funny thing about GLP-1s is that they have been shown to increase fertility and they're helping women get pregnant. But then you have to go off of it. And that is a really tricky thing for someone with type 1 because you're going to go off it and now your insulin needs are going to totally change, and it will take a couple months, you know?
Is it
And
helping
then so
people get pregnant because of the insulin resistance? Like it's bringing that back down to normal ranges?
I can't say that I've really read why. But I just know there's a lot of headline. Like I did read it at some point, but I didn't retain it. So I don't think they know why. I think it's like maybe, I mean, that sounds like a great theory, and
Mhm.
we should send you to the FDA. Like, have you guys thought of this? Sam has an idea, but I think that
Well,
is one of the,
it makes sense. Well, because they say, the more you regulate your blood sugar, higher chances of getting pregnant. And if this can help
yeah.
regulate blood sugar, then that would make sense.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this is even in non-diabetics with normal blood sugars, but so insulin resistance definitely can affect fertility. So if you have a high level of insulin resistance, I mean, that's definitely got to be a big part of it.
So does Ozempic also help with things like PCOS?
I think so. We could Google that. So the other uses of Ozempic, yes, actually, you know what? I already know that. It is recently, like literally just, I think this month, FDA approved to treat PCOS. So that means that you can um, help get it. Treat type 2 diabetes if you also have, because PCOS is defined by insulin resistance, or it's, one of the huge
Mhm.
characterizations of it. It's also being studied for its impact on addiction because
Mm.
it's already proven to kind of help in research, drug and alcohol addiction, because it is calming down, in the same way that it calms down our cravings for food.
Mhm.
It calms down those same things in your brain that are craving and rewarded by. So it reduces the reward as well. The reward of alcohol, the reward of drug
Interesting.
use. I think it actually, I haven't studied this on myself really carefully, but I think it actually has made me less aware of being buzzed by alcohol.
Oh,
My normal tolerance for drinks is 2 servings of alcohol. And I feel like I have been pushing that boundary because I don't feel the impact.
is that a good or
at
bad thing,
all.
though?
Well, it is unless you are my husband or my best friend and you're like, oh my God, please don't order a third margarita.
Yeah.
She doesn't need it. They try to, and I'm like, I'd love a third margarita. And they're like, no, bartender, no. And it does hit me eventually. The third margarita is like, oh, that was too much. Who let me order this?
Too much tequila.
Too much tequila, which is, normally I think the more tequila, the better. But yeah, so I mean, for someone, I have to just be really careful of how much alcohol I consume because it doesn't take me long to, I mean, it's literally one drink, and I'm like, whoa, that was too much. But like, I do think now had 2 incidences at all-inclusive resorts a year apart where it's already paid for, so it's really easy to overdrink at an all-inclusive resort. And I do think that the GLP-1s, I have not vomited from alcohol since I was 21 years old. And it was my 21st birthday. Do you know what I mean? Like, so this is not a normal problem for me, what I'm about to describe. I had too much to drink on the last day in the Bahamas a year ago. And part of it was that they were serving it in these weird glasses. And so it was really 1.5 servings of wine, not just one.
Mm.
And I was intending to have more than two. It was our very last day. It was the first day where the sun actually came out. We're in this outdoor pool with a swim up bar, right? So I probably had what I thought was 4, but it could have easily been like 6 servings of wine over the course of this long afternoon. And I got back to our room and I was like, oh my God, I feel like not just too drunk, but like really sick. And I do think that Ozempic um, has highlighted, like it made when I've had too much alcohol, it's like, oh, you've had too much alcohol and you need to get it out of your system now. I had to stick my finger down my throat and puke. And I had to in the Dominican one afternoon where I had 4 margaritas, and I can handle 3, but I had that fourth and it was like, I have got to puke.
Gosh,
And I just never experienced that before. So I do think that it has made me much more sensitive to alcohol in that regard, made my stomach more sensitive to alcohol.
interesting. Because
Yeah,
it's in the
that's
gut.
a working theory that hopefully I don't actually test again.
Yes,
And
hopefully not.
again, like I don't drink that much normally. So these are literally a year apart where it was like the exact same experience practically. One was wine and one was tequila. But I haven't had that experience in between because I don't normally have more than 3 margaritas at home, max. You know what I mean? It was only when I really pushed that boundary at an all-inclusive resort.
I wonder if somebody did like a gut test, like one of those stool tests, to check your like
Hmm.
microbiome, like what it would look like when you're on something like Ozempic.
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
it looks worse, better. I mean, I don't know, but it just would be
Yeah.
interesting to test.
I don't know. And a study that came out again, and people ask me about it. I get messages from people. What do you think of this study? So, a couple studies, a recent one again, emphasized that it's increasing your risk of diabetic retinopathy or eye disease. And in the first study, they just said, oh, it's just a correlation because a lot of people who are on Ozempic are already at a high risk of this eye complication, right? Then this more recent study, it was saying the same thing, but with more severe language. Personally, I think it's the same thing of most people who are taking GLP-1s are struggling with severe insulin resistance, high blood sugars, obesity, all things that increase your risk of complications like diabetic eye disease.
Mhm.
I'm not going to stop taking it because of that
Well, plus you're
medication.
taking such a small dose. It's not like you're taking loads
Exactly.
of it.
And I'm on such a small dose. And I think I don't think they've done enough to really identify that Ozempic is causing blindness or diabetic retinopathy. I don't think that's really, you know what I mean? They haven't pinpointed the actual variables. So, anyway, it's another reason to not abuse the medication and take a ridiculous dose. And it is being over medicated, it is being overdosed.
Mhm.
I think it should be widely accessible to, and I don't care if it's because you have a hard time with food addiction and you're overeating. If this helps you manage that, because there's so many reasons that feed abusive food, right?
Mhm.
And disorders like that, binge eating. I am not like we don't get to all stand around and be like, just eat less. Why can't you just control yourself? Like whether that person has a chemical imbalance that makes them unable to regulate their appetite, or they were sexually assaulted as a child and they've been abusing food ever since to survive and cope, I don't care. That's your business, and we are not experts in that. And there's so many reasons in between those two things. Let's respect it. And if this drug helps you, I'm glad it helps you, right?
Why is it
But we all,
being
yeah.
why is it being over prescribed by doctors? Like, why are they not
Oh,
giving them the correct amount?
wow. Because the study said that this is the best amount to get 20% weight loss in our incredible study that said, look how amazing this drug is. I think that's really what it comes down to is you need two milligrams in order to get a 20% weight reduction. It's like, yeah, but at what expense
Do you
of
think it
side?
has anything to do with them wanting to make money?
Oh, I believe yes.
They're like, the
Oh my
more they take, they're gonna have to order more.
We got a whole bunch of federations we got to send you to, Samantha. We need you to just go, like, let's move RFK Jr. out of the way and put you in it. Because, yeah, it's ridiculous. It's so corrupt, right? It's so corrupt. And
Yes.
let's give it, like most people, a small amount of a drug like this. And because obesity is so rampant, right? But let's not make them sick with constipation and nausea and stomach pain. And
Right.
then there's, the studies where, oh, Ozempic causes gastroparesis. Gastroparesis is kind of, if you use the words in there, it's kind of like you're paralyzing your digestive tract. It's not moving food through.
Mm.
Yeah, if you take too much. Yes. You take too much of a drug that's going to slow down digestion. That's like a known intent of the drug, and you're abusing it. Well, yeah, no kidding. You have gastroparesis. Take
Hmm.
less and exercise and eat enough fiber and drink enough water. Take less of the drug and then combine it with lifestyle habits. That is another thing that Chris pointed out when I was interviewing him, my T1D endo friend. Um, he said that it can also reduce your awareness and cravings for just water too. So it's
Hmm.
reducing that sensation. So you need to make sure you drink enough water.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll be on it the rest of your life?
I intend to take it until somebody cures me. I do.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Very
because it's
interesting.
so helpful. And I mean, I really think it's giving our body what we are not regulating properly, right?
Hmm.
And so I do think it just helps reduce the risk of all the things that are associated with needing a lot of insulin and blood sugars and all that stuff. I've conducted zero long-term studies, right? But yeah.
Do you think
Uh,
any type ones shouldn't take it? Are there any types of people in general that should not take a GLP-1?
if you have existing gastroparesis, you definitely shouldn't take it because you already have such delayed digestion. That would just be really dangerous. Well, they do say that anyone with an eating disorder shouldn't take it. I have a YouTube video with a friend of mine who she credits GLP-1 for helping her overcome her eating disorder because a big part of what was fueling her eating disorder was that constant craving for food. So she obviously already had kind of the risk factors that she couldn't even control. She was probably born with that set her up for disordered eating, right?
Hmm.
Then you had type 1 added to that and the constant hunger that comes with it. And so she was binging and purging and restricting insulin. And so GLP-1 calmed down that constant thinking about food, the food noise that we all have. But
Hmm.
she had it to that further extent, right? And yeah, she's in recovery thanks to. And they can't get it approved by their insurance, so they're paying out of pocket a crazy amount.
Well, but now she has
Yeah.
to stay on it, right? Because if she goes off, she might get that.
Yeah, absolutely needs to stay on it.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
when you go, you can't. Like, let's say you were on it to lose 100 pounds, and hopefully you lost that 100 pounds with support from changes in your lifestyle habits, right? So you've improved your metabolism just with exercise and nutrition and everything too. Your liver, if you go off it, is going to start producing more insulin. My lifestyle habits were the same before and after Ozempic. I was already exercised 7 days a week, a lot. I already eat a diet of mostly very clean foods, right? I already practice intermittent fasting. I was not on it for weight loss. I did lose like 3 pounds, and I called out 3 pounds like insulin chub. It was like
Yeah.
3 pounds that I would never have been able to budge myself,
Yep.
because it's just insulin. I would have had to undereat in
Yes.
order to, right?
Oh,
It's that liver glucose, the extra
hmm.
liver glucose that I was producing. When you go off of it, your liver is going to start producing that extra glucose again. So I would gain back at least 3 pounds and hopefully not much more, not that rebound effect you read about because I didn't lose a lot. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But the more you lost, the more likely you are going to regain, especially if you aren't being really diligent about your exercise habits and your relationship with food.
So you think a type
So
1 could obviously go without Ozempic or a GLP-1? It just would benefit them if
it
they
just,
wanted to.
it's so hard to realize how helpful it is until you've experienced it. It just,
Hmm.
and then on that article I was mentioning where I have just a billion quotes from people sharing their experience, it just makes everything a little easier. And you can have a day of terrible blood sugars on Ozempic. Sure thing, no problem.
Hmm.
Like,
Well, it's like you
don't take the
mentioned,
right amount of insulin.
you still have to eat healthy and exercise. It's not like you can
Yeah.
just
And
stop
you still
that
have to
and.
work really hard to dose your insulin accurately, but
Hmm.
it just helps. It makes it easier to stay in range. It
Really
it's
cool.
less. My A1C is the same, right?
Hmm.
And but I have to work less hard, I feel like, to stay in that
Interesting.
range. I'm still working hard. Diabetes still sucks,
It
but I
does.
feel like it's less. Um, It's more manageable. It's like a toddler that has been disciplined properly in the first 3 years of its life and been
Hmm.
held accountable versus here's a toddler who's never been told no. It's like, right? Both toddlers are kind of terrible to be around. But, and I don't want to have to do either of those experiences again as a mother of a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. But um, the toddler that did receive proper discipline between the ages of 0 and 3 is way more easy to be around than the toddler that was never told no
It's a
and
good
got everything.
analogy.
Yeah.
So if somebody, a type 1 diabetic, wants to get on Ozempic or GLP-1 of some sort, how should they bring it up to their endocrinologist?
Yeah. It's going to come down very much on what kind of endo you have. If you have an endo who is open-minded and willing to do the work, and we should point out that endos do the most, like they have one of the most high intense, I'm just checking my blood sugar, 79. They have one of the most demanding jobs in terms of like paperwork and insurance approvals and all that stuff. And they get the least financial reimbursement. They're the one of the least paid.
Mm.
So that could be one of the reasons why your endo is like, I'm not going to bother with this because it's going to be denied. But if you have an endo who's clever, and knows how to document severe, like I just told my endo, severe insulin resistance. I was experiencing more dramatic dawn phenomenon,
Mm.
perimenopause impact where I was seeing, but I didn't on paper. It was like, okay, Ginger, your long acting needs were going from 10 to working them way up to 15 units a day. That's not severe in the eyes of an insurance company. So they would be like, please, right? They want to see you at 200 units. Now, I'm not going to wait around for that to happen. So,
Yeah.
no. Um, but I put it all in my note to my doctor of like severe insulin resistance and post blood sugars that I can't manage, post meal blood sugar spikes that I can't manage. You need to be dramatic. In this applies to all things, right?
Mhm.
Like I just got approval for the Eversense CGM, but I had to fight for it over the course of months. And I did have a very dramatic skin reaction to the Libre, but I needed to express, and when I say express, I don't mean document, right? You need to express very dramatic problems.
Mhm.
And by express, I mean just type it like a storyteller
Yep.
in my chart and send it to your doctor. And then that's what they use to send to your insurance company.
Mm. ChatGPT
Now,
that.
yeah. Yeah. Now, if you have trouble with either a difficult endo or a difficult insurance company, go to diabetesnp.com and work with Chris. I don't know what he charges just to help you get insurance approval because I didn't have to go through him, but I know he has helped a lot of people who have contacted me and said that they had trouble. I get zero kickback. I just know Chris is a really good guy, and I know that whatever he's doing, he knows how to work that insurance approval, and he believes in the benefit of getting you the drug. So he's willing to do that work, right? And I'm sure there's some kind of fee you're paying him to do that time,
Mhm.
but he is getting people their health insurance to approve the GLP-1
Okay. That's
class.
funny too, because this is off topic a little bit, but Afrezza, I brought that up to my endocrinologist and she was against it. And I kept telling her, I was like, but I want to bring down my high blood sugars quicker. And she was like, but you don't have high blood sugars. I'm like, I do occasionally. Like, yeah. So
She's
she wasn't,
against it because she's ignorant and she doesn't know how it works. Sorry, but your endo does not. She's not open-minded and she hasn't learned about Afrezza and she has some really outdated misconceptions about it too.
she did say something how I would have to get a test done first. I don't
A
remember.
lung function test,
Yeah, yes, yes.
you don't have to. I've never done it.
Okay.
I've never done it and I've had two different health insurance companies approve it.
Okay. That's good to know.
She can make you do it if she wants to, if she's worried about your lung function. Now, do you have asthma?
No,
No. Do you have any reason to believe there's a problem with your lungs?
no.
No. So she doesn't need to make you do that test. She could just send in the prescription, do the prior auth, where again, you need to very dramatically and emphatically say, I'm so burnt out on taking injections. I don't think I can handle it anymore. And I use Afrezza and I still take injections because the Afrezza cannot replace my need for all injections. I still take injections of rapid acting in addition to long acting, right? Afrezza is ultra rapid acting. But I convinced them that, oh my God, I need to reduce and I shouldn't even have to express that.
Right. Yeah.
Who wants to take a million injections all day?
Well, and I think
I
she
should,
was like, your A1C is low enough, but I'm like, yeah, but imagine if I had a Afrezza, it'd be even lower.
yes, and that's not fair because the work you're putting in that comes with a lot of injections or a lot of insulin infused into your skin with a pump.
Yep.
You should not even have to ask for this. And I could send you an article or several. You can find it if you go to diabetesnerd.com/articles.
Hmm.
I have a whole section on there on inhaled insulin. I also have a YouTube video, how to get insurance approval. And it
Great.
explains all the different things that you need to do, or you need to
Amazing.
explain, right? I actually, my insurance company had never covered it for anyone before. I have insurance through the state of Vermont,
Hmm.
Blue Cross Blue Shield. So they denied it without even letting my doctors send in the proper appeal paperwork because
Hmm.
my primary care messed it up. He didn't send in what they needed, so they just said, "Nope, nice try. You're done. That was your last chance." They wouldn't reopen it. So I figured out who the CEO is of Blue Cross Blue Shield. I figured out where he lives because I just basically put his name into white pages, and there was two different people with that name. One of them lived in a shitty town and one of them lived in a swanky town. I was like, obviously it's that guy. I looked up that house. It was a $1.4 million house. Obviously, this man is the CEO of an
Yeah,
insurance company. And I sent him a letter to his house and I guessed his email address at Blue Cross Blue Shield. And it was a nice letter. But I said I've taken like 17 bajillion. It was like I did the math. It was like about 56,000 injections over the last 25 years. Imagine if I could reduce this. Oh, wait, I could, but your insurance company won't give me the opportunity. Please reconsider and stop being an asshole. And they opened the case and they let my doctor send in the proper paperwork that they asked for, which basically you need to also express needle fatigue and lipohypertrophy, which means like we all have it. We just don't talk about it or even know that it's there. It's hardening of fat
mm,
from injections and insulin. It's like little fat cells that have hardened in your body. You have it. We all have it. So anyway, those are the two things you need to
that's
put
like
in
the
your
best story I think I've ever heard.
the best
That's
stories I got.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any last tips for our audience of type 1 diabetics about
Advocate
GLP-1s?
for yourself. If you want a GLP-1 and your endo says no, say, hey, I know a whole lot of type 1s who are not obese who are taking this because it helps them compensate for five other hormones that we don't regulate properly. Blow their mind with the fact that you know that. Just say
Mm,
that sentence. And they'll say, well, and some endos really don't like being outsmarted by their patients. So if you have an endo like that, get a new endo if you can. If you can't, go work with Chris. Spend a little bit of money for whatever he charges to help you just get through that one insurance barrier. And then go to your endo and be like, hey, I got this through another avenue. It's amazing. And fuck you for not helping me get it. I have a really hard disease to live with every day, and you should be doing anything you can to help me make it easier.
bam.
Same goes for Afrezza. Yeah. Be like, nope, I know you think that it's this and that about Afrezza, but that's a misconception. You're thinking of Exubera, which was the first and failed form of inhaled insulin. This is different. I know lots of type 1s who use it and love it. You need to open your mind and educate yourself. Fuck off.
And we'll leave it
Me
at
being
that, folks.
real candid, Sam. I don't think I've ever really said that in a podcast episode.
We'll bleep it
You
out. It's
can
fine.
bleep those if you need to, but mostly I mean it. I don't like it when endos shut people down just because they're ignorant. It's not
Mhm.
fair.
It's not fair. You're right.
We're doing
Definitely
everything
not
we
fair.
can to manage and survive and thrive with this stupid disease. Help us out.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here, Ginger.
Thanks for having me.